Agenda meeting for, that came on hard, and loud. For Tuesday, May 3rd, 2022, at 3 p.m. I'd like to welcome everybody. Madam Clerk, we've got Commissioner Abley, Commissioner Britton, Commissioner Carswell, myself in attendance. I don't see Commissioner Taylor as of yet. Of course, our county finance officer and our county manager and our county attorney are also in attendance, Madam Clerk. I would ask everyone to please silence their electronic devices. And as you do come up and present today, please remember, unlike me who started it out and Scott had to turn it on, make sure the red light comes on. And Madam Clerk, Commissioner Taylor is in attendance, so all five are here. Gentlemen, before we get started, I just want to ask for a moment of silence for Beverly Rowland. She's a retired Burke County Communications Supervisor and 27-year member of the Burke County REACT. She'll be laid to rest on Thursday, May 5th at 2022. And so I just want you to, everyone please keep her and her family in your thoughts and prayers. And if you'll please bow your head for a quick moment of silence, please. Thank you. Well, gentlemen, moving on to item number 2, approval of the agenda. You've had an opportunity to review the agenda. Do we have a motion to approve the agenda as presented? Thank you, Commissioner Britton. All those in favor signify with uplifted hand. That is 5-0, Madam Clerk. Move on to item number 3, presentations. Pets of the Month, presented by Caitlin Suttermeyer, and I believe our good friend, Madam Clerk, Kay, will represent.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Animal Services will be at your regular meeting to present a dog and cat in need of its forever home.
Any comments, gentlemen? If not, without objection, this item will remain on the agenda. Thank you. Next up, Tourism Development Authority, a financial update for the year ending March 31st, 2022. This will be presented by our good friend, Ed Phillips. Ed, how are you today, sir?
Good. It's a beautiful day in Burke County, except for the little thunderstorm north of here. But so let me present the financials to you guys. I think you have a copy of it. For a budget for revenue, we have a budget of $600,000 for occupancy tax for this fiscal year, which ends June 30th. We've actually collected $486,765.99 as of March 31st. We've also had other revenue, miscellaneous revenue of $37,548. That's for co-op ads that we had in our state magazine that people participated in with us and paid us to be in that. We also have miscellaneous revenue for sponsorship of our Last Mohicans Festival, which I'll cover in a second. Trolley revenue, we had an annual budget of that of $20,000. We've already exceeded that with $23,525.83. So our revenues are above budget in every category. Right now I'm predicting based on last year's numbers and where we're headed, that we're going to exceed $750,000 in occupancy tax on a $600,000 budget. So we're going to be up significantly there. Hotels are doing great. I mean, it's a new era here for accommodations. I heard one of our hotels I talked to yesterday said they had the best April they've ever had since they've ever been open, period. So it's amazing. School of Science and Math are really helping us. We've got a lot of business there, a lot of industry, business travels, and of course leisure travel as well. People coming to enjoy our parks and Fauna Flora State Trail and outdoor recreation. I'll skip over the next page on our balance sheet. As of March 31st, we had $631,000 in the bank. I always remind you that we do have accounts inside of our accounts for City of Morganton and Town of Valdez. They draw that down periodically. At the time of this report, the City of Morganton had $54,894 and the Town of Valdez had $80,424. The Valdez has drawn some of that down since this report in our last payables in April. talk for just a second. Our Last of the Mohicans Festival's coming up here in town. It's going to be Friday, May the 13th and Saturday, May the 14th, 10 to 6 on Saturday. We're also going to be showing the movie at the theater downtown. It'll be the first time in 30 years that Last of the Mohicans been on the big screen. The stories that I'm hearing from locals are about 2,000 plus people involved in this movie here in Burke County. In 1991, it was the largest budget film ever shot in North Carolina, $60 million. And they actually spent $6 million on the fort. A couple hours ago, I had a lady, Miss Smith. Her husband was Lieutenant Smith with the Sheriff's Department. And during the filming in 91, he was in a helicopter cruising around Burke County looking for whatever was going on. And he shot some aerials of that fort. And she brought those to us this morning for us to make copies of. And it is truly amazing, the pictures that she brought in. So the day, Saturday, May the 14th, is going to be an incredible day. We've got Living History is going to be on the square. Essentially, we're turning the square into 1757. We're going to have blacksmiths. We're going to have Living History. We're going to have cooking over an open fire. We're going to have frontiersmen. We're going to have people baking bread. Then we're also going to have live entertainment. It's going to be a really fun day. See me for tickets, or you can buy them online, but it's going to be exciting. I would tell you more about it afterwards, because I'm going to see you at the regular meeting the day after, or the Tuesday after this is over. Talk about the visitor center for just a second. We have seen huge increases in the number of visitors coming to our visitor center in the last month. People coming from all over the United States, Texas, Utah, Vermont, Florida, California, everywhere. I haven't seen visitors come in these numbers probably since 2015, 2016, and it's really increasing. People are super interested in our area to vacation and live, and we have it all, people that just love it. So that's my report. It's kind of beyond the financial part of it, but there's a lot going on that's exciting and good for Burke County.
Thank you, Ed. Gentlemen, comments?
Mr. Chairman, just one quick question. What's your total visitors for the last quarter? I guess you do it by quarters?
We keep a running total, a tab of visitors, and I can present that to you on the May 17th regular meeting. So I'll mark that down and I'll give it to you.
But that's great. Just curious how it was growing. So.
Yeah.
You gonna be able to show that aerial footage somehow? That you got this morning?
Of the
Fort.
Well, there's still pictures, yeah. So we'll be able to show them, yeah.
Okay.
It's going to be really cool. It was an amazing feat, and I know I was talking with Commissioner Britton about it. What Rutherford Electric did back then to put power lines underground, and there's so many. I mean, literally thousands of people in Burke County were involved in that movie, and businesses and cooperation between a lot of people. So
Jeff was in kindergarten then, right? Thank you, Ed. All right, gentlemen, without objection, this item will remain on the agenda. Moving on to BSAN, overview of overdose data dashboard, and this will be presented by our good friend Kim James. Kim, how are you?
I'm well, thank you. How are you doing?
Good.
Good. So I hate having to go after Ed because he's always so cheery, and then I'm like, let's bring it down a little bit. But it works well because what I have to share can seem a bit depressing, but the reason I want to share it is because we love our community so much that we want to help change that. So BSAN stands for the Burke Substance Abuse Network. We are a community coalition. I have the pleasure to serve as the chair on that coalition. In the beginning of 2021, we were talking about overdose numbers that we were seeing from the state. In talking about those numbers and having conversations with local law enforcement, the health department, the hospital, we realized that the numbers that the state had were not the same numbers we were seeing in our community. And so we wanted to determine how can we fix that? How can we figure out what those actual numbers are? There is a difference in understanding if we had 400 or 450. It makes a difference on how we identify trends and how we move forward with changing that. So we put together a data team, of course comprised of law enforcement, the hospital, the health department, and then Bsan representatives. And we were able to pull the 911 call center into that. And based off of those meetings, we now have a cooperative agreement where Bsan and the Drug Free Burke team were the staff behind that. We actually looked through 911 reports for overdose, cardiac arrest, unknown, and unconscious, and we pull all overdose information from that. And so we decided it's one thing for us to have that information, but we wanted that to be public as well. So that is all published on the joinbsan.com website. And we are actually, thank you, that's awesome. Your team is on it today. So this is the actual website live, and these images are also on your packet that you have. We did put some screenshots, or Kay did. And I think it's helpful when you're looking at total overdoses. So we were able to go back and look at 2020 as well. But in 2021, we had an 18% increase in overdose. And I do think it's important when I use the term overdose, we're talking fatal and non-fatal. It takes us a long time to get fatal information because we have to go through the medical examiner. That is a state process. And so when we talk about overdose, it includes all of that. But I would honestly project that 2022 will exceed the number of 656 total. That's a lot. I mean, I know we're a county of close to 90,000, and when you look percentage-wise at overdoses versus total population, it doesn't seem like a lot, but a life is a life. And so when we even think about overdoses by substance, which is the next chart below that, thank you, we're looking at a huge increase in fentanyl. This is not news. Everybody has seen that. Fentanyl use increased by 313% from 2020 to 2021. The reason that we're seeing that huge increase is pills are being laced. We have pills that are being pressed. We have various things that are being laced. So I think it's really important to understand just how much fentanyl is fatal. So if you imagine 3 grains of salt in your hand, that much fentanyl could kill a grown adult. That's it. So if you put that into something, you're not going to know that that's in a pill or that that's in a rolled joint of marijuana or anything like that. So we see a lot of lacing issues, and people are seeking the best high that they can possibly get. The best high equals the closest to death. Fentanyl is going to achieve that. So sadly, that's what people are wanting to achieve to treat the addiction disease that they have. We're also looking at overdose by age. There's a definite misconception that this is something that teenagers are doing. That's not the case. We're seeing overdoses occur in the highest numbers between the ages of 19 and 60. This is not a disease that discriminates, and overdose doesn't discriminate either. So we're seeing it in all ages, and these do include accidental overdoses. So it could be somebody who was given opioids as pain medication, they accidentally take 2, or a child accidentally gets access to that medication. So one of the things we're doing to address that is our Lock Your Meds program. We want to make sure that anybody who has any kind of prescription medication has a means to lock that up. Burke Recovery provides all of that for free. So I also want to look at overdose, Narcan used on site for the overdoses. This is really valuable information. Narcan use increased by 84%. Now, in case you're not familiar with Narcan, it reverses opioid overdose, only opioid. But fentanyl is an opioid, so if something is laced and nobody knows, using Narcan will not hurt, it can only help. We saw this increase and got really excited that our community-wide Narcan distribution was really taking off. But we also had to pair that with the fact that when individuals are requiring up to 8 doses of Narcan to reverse an overdose, that's sending that number up as well. But what we also saw anecdotally through all the reports, which was really encouraging, is that people in the community had Narcan and were able to respond and help until EMS arrives on site. So that's the encouraging part of this, is that we do have a lot of overdoses in our community. We're one of the highest locations in the state by far, but that also means that we're able to put into place a lot of initiatives that we are seeing currently as working. I do want to point out also that 911 calls did increase for overdose by 34% in 2021. There's 2 things to this. One, overdoses are increasing, but people are also feeling better about calling 911 or letting somebody know. A lot of overdoses happen behind closed doors and we don't know anything about it. So I wanted to share that we have this site. We update this site every couple of months as soon as we get the information from the 911 call center. We also are presenting on May 27th through the Burke Substance Abuse Network monthly meeting, a comprehensive planning project that we have put together with the assistance of the Kate B. Reynolds Trust, We will be looking at a community-wide story map as well as a community-wide plan talking about trends that we're seeing, places of need, what we would like to implement, what programs work well, and what programs need to be enhanced. So we hope that everyone will join with that. We will also be doing a touring simulation called Secrets Revealed, where we talk about high-risk behaviors for teenagers. We were actually at Freedom High School today sharing that information because of the overdoses they've had there. They want all of their staff trained. So it's going to be a community-wide event open to anybody and everybody, and we'll be sharing that information. So with that, I will ask for questions or comments.
Thank you, Kim. Gentlemen, questions, comments?
Mr. Chairman, if we could go back to page 2, I believe it is. Looking at the top line. Let me get back there. 2020, 556 overdoses. 2021, 656. 2022 year to date. And according to your graph, that does not include March, just January and February.
That is correct.
Well, I was hoping I could see daylight at the end of the tunnel. I was hoping we were coming down, but, and you really would be coming down a little, even if you numbered that, multiplied that number, 114 by 5, you'd be under your 600 benchmark on the other one, but, good report.
Thank you.
Obviously, we do, have some legitimate concerns of drugs and how do we get people to quit using them. So, but I appreciate the report. Very thorough. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Any other questions, comments, gentlemen? Thanks for the information. Great presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you. Gentlemen, that is it for our presentations. We'll go on to consent agenda items. We'll start with Burke County Public School presentation of financial data for period ending March 31st, 2022, and this will be presented by Mr. Keith Lawson. How are you, sir?
Doing well, I hope you are. Good afternoon, gentlemen.
Good afternoon.
Pleasure to stand before you today and present Burke County Public Schools March year-to-date results. This is in your packet and on the screen. Our first slide represents our total annual revenues for Burke County Public Schools. As you can see, the first 2 columns represent the previous year's total revenues, and then our projected revenues for the current year. And then what we're here to discuss today would be the March year-to-date columns. State being our largest funding source. Last year was at $61.7 million. You can see this year we're at 67.9, or basically $68 million. Now that may appear to be a bit alarming. That's a significant increase year to year. But what's represented here is the fact that previous to the current year that we're in, the state had a plan, we referred to it as the state installment plan. It's where we took teachers, or the state actually took teachers' pay earned over 10 months and spread it out and paid it to them over 12. What that has done, when that program was eliminated, we didn't realize that expense until we actually paid the teachers that 11th and 12th payment. Now that's accelerated our expenses for each month as the year progresses, because we're realizing that money as it's actually earned by the teachers. Unfortunate for teachers, now they're paid 10 months and not 12. So that's a result of that significant increase. Next, our second largest funding source typically would be you all, the commissioners, but in the case of this year, it's our federal funds. That is as a result of our ESSER funding, which is, bless you, which is our elementary and secondary schools emergency relief funding, or COVID funds from the federal government. As you can see, spending year to date to previous is up 255%. We've spent about $12 million more to this point as we did last year. Again, that's ESSER money. That's primarily certified bonuses, learning loss initiatives in order to try to bring students back up test scores results, and then also numerous HVAC projects to improve air quality in the school buildings around the district. The next categories, local, school nurses, and charter schools, are all funds provided by you, the commissioners. That's relatively flat. You can see charter schools is up significantly. Again, we see that as a result of COVID and the uncertainty in public schools over the last couple of years. As a result of that, we have seen a pretty significant increase or loss of our students to charters, particularly virtual charter schools. So then we have receivables. That's school receivables, basically flat year to year. Then next, our special revenues. That is up 11.8%. Again, that's primarily as a result of our pre-K programs being fully operational this current school year as opposed to the previous year. Our next slide represents specifically local spending, funds that you all provide. I'll draw your attention, if I may, to the right, the far right of the slide. Just inside that bolded box, you'll see a total column. 3.3 million for regular instructional spending, 7.7 for instructional support, other governmental, for a total spending through 3 quarters of 12.4 million. Just to the right, and that is our previous year's spending for 3 quarters. You can see that's 12.2 million. So we are up slightly year to year. As you can see, that's primarily $205,000 that's in instructional support, and that's basically us feeling the pressures of inflation. As we have discussed in earlier meetings and is noted at the bottom of the slide, the CPI was up 7.9%, as we all know, through February. Energy was up 29.3%, electricity 6.3%. Gasoline that we all feel at the pump was up 49.6%, and commodities less food and energy was up 10.7%. So again, more than our total spending, because there's some offsets, are all in that instructional support line, which in this instance in local spending represents facilities operations and maintenance. One saving grace we do have at this point as a comparison to last year that's going to help us somewhat is our fines and forfeitures revenue is up $161,000, as is noted in the column just below. So it's basically offsetting our increased spending through 3 quarters. I don't know what kind of indicator that may be for the county that fines and forfeitures have increased, but from the financial perspective and speaking for the school systems, it's certainly a benefit to us to see that line item increase. We do expect our 4th quarter to end strong. We're really feeling the pressures of inflation at this point. We were paying a year and a half ago $16,000 for a load of fuel that we're now paying $31,000 for. Just one small example. But we are doing and making all efforts possible to mitigate and try to offset that through creative uses of ESSER funding when allowable and where we can. And as a result, I hope you all will find that our budget submission for next year also is keeping in line with trying to be good partners with you, the county commission, trying to deal with these inflationary pressures and yet seek the needs of what we need in the school system. With that said, I'm certainly open to any questions or comments you may have.
Thank you, Keith.
Thank you.
Any comments, questions?
Mr. Chairman, Keith, an excellent report, but you mentioned the word, the most increases are coming from inflation, and I can concur with you about the diesel fuel and all that.
Yes.
Expenses going up. And my question has really not a whole lot to do with the budget, but just wondering, are we back down to about normal, close to normal at school, and everything going smooth on all fronts?
Absolutely. COVID cases are substantially down, of course, as I'm sure you all are very well aware. We rarely hear of a COVID case, or at least I do. Masks are still, not mandatory, not required, but are certainly optional if preferred by anyone. That's encouraged, and we also have programs in the schools. I know Ms. LaCroix, our Student Services Director, works with our mental health staff persons to make sure there's no bullying or issues of kids bullying students who opt to wear a mask versus don't, because we know that can be the case sometimes. We're, for the most part, back to business as normal.
And attendance is good, people that come?
Attendance is good. Since the North Carolina Plan Book has changed, and we're no longer required to quarantine through exposures unless symptoms are shown, that's resulted in a huge increase in the attendance rate.
I was talking to a teacher, it's been a couple, maybe 3 weeks ago, and her surmise was that her classes are going to end the year pretty much on target with education that's transferred, and
That's wonderful to hear.
That is great to hear. Yes,
I hope that's widespread.
Thank you again for the report.
Thank you.
Is the ADM up or down?
Our ADM is down once again, but it has stabilized. And now that we are, for the most part, back to normal operations in the school system, we don't anticipate any significant decreases for next year. As I said, we've seen bleeding to virtual and brick and mortar charter schools as a result of, and at least we speculate and believe it's as a result of the COVID crisis and the mandatory masking and such. So we expect ADM to remain relatively flat this year to next.
Well, good or bad, it's good to hear that fines and forfeitures are up.
Yes.
Did state indicate any programs that they might assist with some of these prices that have escalated?
Our state budget is very, very heavily weighted towards payroll and benefits. It's almost 90% actually, with the exception of state instructional supplies money. That aside, it's primarily payroll. So obviously we haven't seen that great super growth. I wish our pay was keeping up with inflation. The inflationary pressures that we're feeling pretty much is in our local budget, because you as the county commissioners are looked to from the state to fund and support the maintenance and upkeep of facilities. And obviously that's where we're feeling all those inflationary pressures, with the exception of our yellow bus transportation department, which is state funded. At this point, we anticipate spending about $350,000 more on fuel this year than last. And we have applied and have not yet received relief from the state from their contingency funds to help offset some of that.
Gentlemen, any other questions for Keith? All right, thank you so much
Thank
for
you.
your presentation.
Yes, sir.
Without objection, this item will remain on the consent agenda. Item number 2 will be presented by Madam Clerk, reappointments to Adult Care and Nursing Home, CAC.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. This is a request to reappoint Victoria Whitworth to seat 4 and Susan Merrill, seat 13, to the Adult Care and Nursing Home Community Advisory Committee for 3-year terms ending May 31st, 2025.
Gentlemen, any questions or comments?
Mr. Chairman, I don't have a question about this applicant, but I do have a question about applicants in general. Okay, I continue to notice that quite a few blanks, fields are not completed. Do we continue to place people on the boards without that application being completed?
Well, they are completing the required data. For example, like this one applicant did not give us a business phone number. If that's a concern, you know, we can certainly follow up with them, but we have a home number and an email.
Well, excuse me. You got a field here that says, are you willing to attend board or committee meetings on a regular basis? Field not completed. And that's a little bit of concern. And we probably ought to talk about this a little bit later at some point, but, you know, personally, just a personal opinion more than anything else, and that's like noses, everybody has one, right? But either they should fill in the thing or say not applicable in A, or draw a line to it or put a 0 on it, or say, at least we know they looked at that bracket of information. So, but that one bothers me. Are you willing to attend board or committee meetings and you want to go on a committee? You ought to be able to answer that question, yes. But just in general, again, gentlemen, co-commissioners, I continue to notice more and more that some of those fields are not completed, and they're so simple they really should be completed.
We could have them, that question required for a response, and can make any of the others required if you want that.
Excuse me, that's a different question because I was not referring to this particular, but just applications that are, in general, they're missing some. I think they're important questions. If I'm a chairman of a committee and you don't answer that question, you know, I would probably pick a candidate that did answer it. That's just an example now.
Right. And since these are reappointments, if they had not been attending, we probably wouldn't be requesting their reappointment.
That's all I had, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Any other questions, gentlemen? If not, without objection, this item will remain on the agenda. We'll move on, Kay, to removal from the Animal Advisory Board.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Miss Nancy Woolover, who occupied seat 7, has relocated to another state. So this is a request to remove her from the roster and thank her for her service to the community. And I anticipate having another item for your June agenda for an appointment.
So there's no shortage of applicants on this, I take it.
Well, we got 2 today, so.
Great. Any questions, gentlemen? If not, without objection, this item will remain on the consent agenda. Item number 4, reappointment to Parks and Recreation Committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. This is a request to reappoint Mendel Dearberry to the Parks and Recreation Commission, seat number 3, representing Drexel, to complete the remainder of a 3-year term ending March 31st, 2025.
Gentlemen, any questions? Being none, without objection, this item will remain on the consent agenda. Thank you, Madam Clerk. Next item, community development. Accept Lake James Camping Resort Trail easement. This will be presented by Shane, Operations Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. In January 2020, the Board of Commissioners accepted a trail easement from Lake James Camping Resort LLC for the Fonta Flora and Over Mountain Victory Trails. The Community Development Department has been working with the campground on an additional trail easement. The proposed trail easement would be the final connection needed to close the gap in the Benfield's landing area of the lake. As the county already has an established easement with the Lake James Camping Resort LLC, the additional easement can be added to the existing agreement as an amendment. I'd be happy to answer any questions you gentlemen have about the easement.
Gentlemen, for the presentation, any comments, questions?
Shane, this is just a due process item, isn't it, that You're just adding to and making it better?
That is correct, Commissioner. It's an additional trail easement that connects from the ones that we do have, but that gets us to where the state parkland is. We've tried a few times with different landowners to close this, but they haven't been willing, or we've gotten to the table and they've walked away from it for various reasons. But we have a willing party who sees the benefit of this project for their resort and the people who come and enjoy their stay there, and the connection it provides for the lake and recreation resources as a whole.
Very good.
Mr. Chairman, Shane, is this running through the tiny homes portion of the LLC, this easement?
Yes, quick description from the preliminary plat. You can see it comes up the road, and that was a recommendation from the state early on, as they are also co-owners of the road with the state. So that's kind of a bit of cleanup. As we make our way up you can see at the top, very top of the map, that's partly for their septic easement, but that gives us space to make a connection into the road, and that's Benfield's Landing Road, where we would then cross over to their property, and that would come through the front of their campground, and we walk
It's
through.
right behind West End Fire Department, right?
It is, Weston Fire Department is right there.
Okay.
So we would be on the opposite side of the road from them, and we come
Opposite
around.
side, okay.
That is correct. So we wouldn't interfere with their activities, and the crossing of the road is beyond there at a point that was determined with NCDOT to be the best location with the best sight lines. As this wasn't our first option for crossing, we've worked with not only with the LSC, but also NCDOT to work on a plan so that we can have consistent crossage signing and a plan for that, so that they can essentially approve them all as one little package, and they'll work together, so that for people who are driving through there and for the trail users, it's consistent and it's safe for them to navigate the trail and come across the road.
Okay, as a sidebar, can you give me kind of an update where the LLC is with their project?
They're moving a lot of earth out there. They're looking to get that done. They'd love to have it done for spring, but I think they're a little bit behind with just the weather and, of course, the ubiquitous supply chain issues. But I think they're hoping to have it for the summer, and they want to be open this year and as soon as they possibly can.
All right, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. Any other questions, comments? All right, Shane, thank you.
Thank you very
Without
much.
objection, this item will remain on the consent agenda. We'll move on to item number 6, amendment to Burke County Personnel Policy, Article 5, Section 5.11, Technology Appropriate Use Policy, presented by Lorinda Johnson, our interim HR director. Afternoon.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Chairman and members of the board. We currently have a Burke County Personnel Policy 5.11 that indicates that text messaging is generally not an authorized form of communication. It is becoming an increasingly necessary form of communication in situations such as people that are in an area where the bandwidth does not allow a telephone call, won't allow an email, but it will allow a text message to go through. We find ourselves utilizing that more and more to reach each other in emergencies. I discovered last week 911 is considering future movement toward citizens being able to use text messaging to contact 911 in situations of emergencies also. We are finding with the labor shortage, whichever company gets a hold of the candidate first is the one that gets the interview and has a better chance at interviewing our preferred and hiring our preferred candidates, because we're able to reach them first by text. For those reasons and many others, we're asking that we move from text messaging being not authorized, i.e. policy violation, to a not preferred method of communication, yet allowable under the correct circumstances. Any questions?
Giant step into the 21st century. Gentlemen?
Mr. Chairman, I do have a couple. Ms. Johnson, I guess one of the things that this kind of throws a red flag to me, does this not create a possibility of creating problems for other people down the road.
Such as?
Well, if I'm doing electronic compliance,
Yes.
and I do half the job, and whoever receives it after me considers it's good enough, but it's not good enough, it doesn't meet the compliance rules. And I see it as an opportunity to have mistakes that we don't want, if that's a good way to put it.
I can see it raising some concerns. We've even had some text messaging that's been forwarded, I believe, to the commission that have been problematic, but I guess I don't see it being any more problematic than some of the emails that have been forwarded to us and some of the oral communication that just occurs between staff members and employees. It is traceable. It is something we can retrieve and review just as we can emails. Again, it's just become a necessity of the 21st century that we be able to communicate with people quickly, and text is becoming an increasing method of communication from our employees and between one another as Burke County employees and our applicants. For that reason, we ask your consideration in changing it from not allowable and not authorized to not preferred.
Well, I think that obviously it would be in compliance as far as the governments and the rules would make, or you wouldn't be recommending that we change the policy. But I just think I was just trying to think if, how's this going to work and what's the end results going to be if people do not fulfill their obligations to dot all the I's and cross all the T's.
I would say, Chairman, you're correct that all forms of communication can be problematic, text messaging not being an exception to that.
Okay, do we have a backup plan to catch such errors?
I don't know of a specific way to catch it unless somebody calls it to our attention. And we do immediately investigate, and we have when we've had complaints about inappropriate texts.
Okay, thank you.
Welcome.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to go on record saying I do not like the 3 words, though not preferred. Thanks, sir.
Any other questions, comments? All right, Lorinda, thank you so much. Without objection, this item will remain on the consent agenda. We'll move on to item number 7, EMS, approval of quality management bylaws, presented by our good friend Jason Black, our EMS director. How are you, sir?
Good evening. I'm doing great. Bylaws for the QM committee, we're trying to get those condensed down, more manageable. The QM committee is required by the state. The committee looks at from the 911 call all the way to the hospital and beyond, and the members make sure we're doing the best patient care that we can do. Oversees communications, first responders, EMS, and we do have hospital representation. Just a little background. This change is a simple one under our previous medical director, who is the chair or ultimately responsible to the state for this committee. We had close to 30 members, which became very unmanageable, and we have condensed it down to 9 voting members brought to you for approval each time there's change, and we have a better handle on who's on that. So that is basically the change to these bylaws, and ready for any questions that you may have.
Jim, any questions for Jason? Thank you, sir. Being none.
Wait one minute, Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry. I just lost my sentence. Jason, there's one sentence in here that said this change should make it easier. Is it going to should make it easier, or is it going to make it easier to get your quorum?
Oh, it will.
It will, okay,
Yes,
so that is definitely going to make it easier to get the quorum and meet your requirements for OEM. Okay, good, thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Any other questions? All right. Thank you, Jason. Without objection, this item will remain on the consent agenda. Item number 8, Finance General Services Sewer System Resiliency Project. This will be presented by Margaret.
I will defer to Mr. Neef if you don't mind, since it's an
Okay.
ARP project, and let him present, please.
Come on down.
Afternoon, gentlemen.
Afternoon.
You got the item in front of you. This is simply accepting the funds that were part of the SCIF money we're getting from the state. In our special meeting last week, Mark presented where we got about one half of the fund, which is $164,000. This is the other half, that $300,000. So this is just to accept the grant from the state for those funds, which is going to be used for sewer system resiliency project. And the two major projects on there is the one thing's going to be the purchase of a sewer jetter that'll help clean out our sewer lines. That, from my understanding from Mr. Allahan, is very, very much needed. And then the rest of the funds will be used to restore some stream banks. These are stream banks that have been eroding over time and are threatening some of our sewer lines. So all this would do would allow us to receive that money from the state and work through them with their process. And there's certain benchmarks that we have to meet before we even get that money from the state. So we'll have to send some stuff off to them, some plans, and they'll send us back, and so we'll just work through that process.
Great.
Any questions?
Gentlemen, questions, comments?
Mr. Chairman, I have a couple, and I understand that we're buying a $65,000 machine to fix 180 linear foot of pipe or clean out. Will this machine, I guess the question really is a two-phase question. Is there a need for this machine after this job's completed, or would we be better off to rent such a machine if it's not going to be needed on a normal basis or regular basis?
Well, my understanding is this is a machine that'll be used going forward to help keep those lines clean. So there's, lots of lines that need cleaning out. So buying this on the trailer mounted will allow them to move it around the county. So it'll help with ongoing preventative maintenance of our sewer lines. So every year, they'll be able to clean out so much and make sure we don't have backups and clogs and things of that nature. That didn't cause some backups at some of the sewer stations.
Can you, just for my benefit, more or less, how does this machine work? Does it work under pressure, air pressure? Does it have a circulating clean-out auger that goes through the pipe, or?
Fortunately, that's not a question I can answer. That's a question that probably Mr. Delahunt could probably better answer. My understanding, though, is based on PSI, so I'm assuming it has to do with water pressure or air pressure, one of the two. That it's a very large trailer-mounted device that, my understanding, just basically shoots either water or air pressure through those lines to get everything cleaned out. So that's about all I'm aware of.
And then my last question is directed at that. In using that machine, is there potential to create much more damage than the cure? Is the fix worse than the cure, I guess, is the question.
Well, I know this is one item that he's expressed in his budget a couple times, so I think it'll be used in a way. I mean, the entire intent of the project is to prolong the life of our sewer lines. So I'm assuming, just like anything, when that project comes, it'll be, they'll be properly trained on how to use it, how to implement it. But the intent is to help not cause more problems, but to solve problems. So.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments? All right, well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And gentlemen, without objection, this item will remain on the consent agenda. We'll move on to item number 9, approval of county plan for county and funding allocation presented by AJ from JCPC. How are you?
Very well, thank you. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Good to see you again. As you may remember from the years past, your Juvenile Crime Prevention Council works throughout the year to complete the North Carolina Department of Public Safety's requirements for receiving funds for the juvenile justice programs locally. These funds require match from the programs, but not from the county. Again, this year, the council and its subcommittees have completed the DPS required work, which comes to you now in the form of the annual plan, for which they respectfully request your approval. As you can see from the documents that you received, there's copious attachments detailing their recommendations for programs to be funded in the coming fiscal year, also documenting the completion of the required work by the council and its committees and the work of the programs themselves. I'll be glad to answer any questions you have about that document or the process or whatever you are interested in knowing.
Questions for AJ? Comments? Well, obviously the report was very thorough, and it was very thorough. Great
It is.
report, so I know that's time consuming, so we appreciate all that good information. So there is no questions for AJ, then without objection, this item will remain on the consent agenda. Thank you.
Thanks so much.
I'll move us to item number 10, Tax Department Release Refund Report for April 2022. Mr. John Bridgers, Tax Administrator.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. You can see from the release report that we released a grand total in the month of April of $6.60. And we did a refund for one automobile for $528.67. For the
Gentlemen, any question on the release refund report? If not, without objection, this item will remain on the consent agenda. We'll move on to tax collection report for April 2022.
All right, thank you,
John,
Mr. Chairman. As of April 30th, we had collected property tax of $45,390,873.71. That is a 100.87% over what was budgeted to be collected. For the motor vehicle taxes, we have collected $4,751,188.17, and that's 90.68% of what's anticipated to be collected for this fiscal year. Current year taxes, we have collected $50,106,000. I think that's $616.88, which is 99.81% of the current year taxes. Delinquent taxes is we've collected $709,154. That's 101.31% over what we anticipated we would collect. And the late list penalty, we have collected $348,863.28, which is 101.75% over what we anticipated to collect for this fiscal year.
Gentlemen, you've heard John's report. Questions, comments?
Pass the tea. Let's celebrate a good report. We've reached our milestones. Very good report. Thank you.
I agree, the numbers look great. Gentlemen, any other questions, comments? Thank you, John. Without objection, this item will remain on the consent agenda. And somehow, poor Sandy, you always pull up the last report, so we're gonna have to change that at some point.
I told Keith Lawson that I was going to have to change the name of our college to A+ Western Piedmont so that I could go first.
Yeah.
Or maybe we could just flip the alphabetical. I don't know.
Yeah, I think we'll have to do something because you do always have to do this. But presentation of financial data for the period ending March 31st, 2022. Welcome, Sandy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the commissioners. I'm going to give a report for the third quarter of the fiscal year 2022. And the first three columns you'll see is our state funds. And while the General Assembly passed the budget for the biennial, we did not get our budget until January. The difference between our baseline budget and our actual was $1,676,066, which is for salary and benefit increases, as well as the non-recurring budget stabilization funds due to the pandemic. And this will be especially helpful as we finish this fiscal year and go into next fiscal year, as much of that will be eligible for carry forward into the next fiscal year. So you can see below the additional funding designated for approved projects. We got a lot of different allocations through the year, more so than in most years, but our total state budget right now, or at the end of March, was $16,507,262. And through March 31st, we've expended 67.2% of our budget. And again, a little bit less than 75% because a good portion of this will be able to carry forward and help us with next year's budget as well. The next three columns in light blue represent the county budget and actual expenditures. And we have spent 65.6% of this budget. And the one thing I'll mention on this is the $44,631 in that blue column under revenue was lost revenue that we pulled down from our CARES Act or HERF funds or ARP funds, whichever group we're talking about. That is helping us with the lost revenue that we did not receive through rental income from the loss of universities using our facilities for classes. That rental income has really diminished over the last year, 2 years due to the pandemic. So we were able to pull down some lost revenue there. The last three columns is our institutional budget, which again, our budget was $9,702,370. Again, much higher than normal due to the HERF and ARP funds that came through, which a lot went to our students for financial aid, and then an institutional portion, which we've been able to use for various things at the college, from cleaning supplies to masks to custodial services to the things that we put on the HVAC units to clean the air in all of our buildings. So many different projects that we've had with that money as well. So our total college budget is $28,861,742, which through March 31st, we've spent $20,466,340, or 70.9% of the budget, which we feel very comfortable with and confident as we continue going forward. The fund balance for county, you see, is higher than normal, and again, that comes from holding some of that fund balance back for several projects that we've got, roofing projects that we did bid out earlier, but the prices were very high with construction cost and not getting enough bids in, that we've held on to that project and have recently rebid that out. So we'll hopefully be able to start that soon. And then also some parking lot improvements on campus for some of our existing parking lots, as well as classroom and office renovations that we have ongoing. On this next slide that you'll see the breakdown of expenditure categories that I like to show as well, just so you see where a majority of our expenses are for our county funds, in which salaries and benefits at 29.4%, utilities at 25.3%, and contracted services at 16.2%. And I'll be happy to answer any questions on any of those numbers.
Gentlemen, heard the presentation.
Mr. Chairman, let me go back, Sandy, to lost revenue at Foothills Higher Education Center from other colleges due to COVID. Do you have an idea how much that was? And is the money coming back?
I don't believe the money is coming back, no, because with COVID, we originally had, before the pandemic, we had at least 5 to 6 universities using the facilities there for classes in the evening. 5 to 6.
Okay.
We had Gardner-Webb, Montreat, Lees-McRae, Western Carolina, and Appalachian. Appalachian being our largest customer there at Foothills.
Did they take the upstairs section or the downstairs?
They have mostly been in the upstairs section, their offices and the classroom spaces that they use.
Over half of the upstairs or most of it?
No, they only really used about 3 classrooms and then a couple of different offices.
Okay.
But
But you don't think it's coming back?
It won't come back to what it was pre-pandemic for a couple reasons. One being they went a lot more to distance learning courses. And then also Appalachian, who, as I mentioned, was our largest customer. They've recently purchased the building in Hickory. And so I don't feel like they will hold classes at any 3 of the community colleges in our area, Caldwell, CVCC, or Western Piedmont.
They made a significant investment in Hickory, as I recall.
significant. They purchased the old C-Corps building on 321, so it's very centrally located between the three community colleges.
That's it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Gentlemen, any other questions, comments? All right, without objection, this item will remain on the consent agenda. All that weight and that easy.
That easy. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, gentlemen, we'll move on for items for decision. This will be presented by our county manager. Presentation of recommended budget for FY 2022-2023 and the scheduling of public hearing presented by Brian Steen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We will have the 12th budget that I will have done for you in a couple of weeks. And we'll try to make sure it's ready for you to review and to move forward with.
Thank you, sir. Any comments? All right, looking forward to it. And just without objection, this item will remain on the agenda. Courtesy reminder, gentlemen, that we got some upcoming budget meetings, May 20th at 2 p.m., May 26th at 2 p.m., and if needed, June 2nd at 2 p.m. That being said, we'll move on to item number 2, finance acceptance of SCIF funds, placeholder presented by Margaret Pierce.
Mr. Chairman, but before you move on, that May 20th is a Friday afternoon. That budget meeting, I know I cannot be there. I don't know if that's conflict with anybody else, but I just want to throw that out. If there was conflicts elsewhere, maybe we could move it up a day, but if not, that's fine.
Friday's not a good day for you either. Okay, well, let's take a quick look.
The 19th, the day before, would be a better day for me if that works for everybody else.
19th's okay with me. That's fine.
Works for me. Gentlemen, is there any objection to me? Yes, ma'am.
What was that day?
That would be May 19th as opposed to May 20th. That'd be Thursday at 2 p.m. since there's multiple conflicts.
Mr. Chairman, without having the exact statute in front of me, I think because this meeting was listed as part of our 2022 meeting resolution, that we would need to adopt a resolution 7 days prior to the change.
So we would need to adopt a resolution today? Because we have a...
So we would have...
Because that would just be 2 days, obviously. So, and when do we need, can we do that now?
I don't see why not, because it's part of this item for decision that you're going through, and somebody's already come up with something that needs to be changed. So I would go ahead and adopt a resolution changing the date from the 20th to the 19th.
Gentlemen, you've heard Madam Clerk and our county attorney. If we desire to move that meeting from the 20th to the 19th, we will need a motion to adopt a resolution doing so.
Mr. Chairman, I don't think you can do a resolution. You're a free agenda. You're not a regular business.
That's what I'm referring to them.
This is a regularly scheduled meeting on your meeting resolution. It's just, we call it a pre-agenda meeting, but it's announced a year in advance, and it's on the meeting schedule.
Yeah, we can change it when we do our regular agenda.
But when we do, it'll be too late, because it's got to be 7 days because of state statute, she thinks.
Perhaps we could just call a special meeting and not do the resolution,
So I can just call a special meeting at as long as it's a week in advance?
but you only need 48 hours, but the more notice, the better, but that's one way to avoid having to change the resolution.
Okay. We'll do that. We'll just do a special called meeting. That's probably the easiest thing to do instead of trying to do a resolution.
Because
And then just cancel the May 20th meeting. Okay, just remind us to do that.
Okay,
Madam
and
Clerk.
still at 2 o'clock.
Still at 2 o'clock, gentlemen? Y'all good with that?
Same day, 19th.
Yes, sir. Okay. We'll just do a special call meeting. One way to skin a cat. All right. No pun intended. Easy out there. Okay. So, we'll move back to item number 2. Margaret.
Good afternoon, gentlemen. This is somewhat of a placeholder. We do not have the contracts yet. We're anticipating getting them either later this week or the first of next week. But these are 3 fundings that were awarded in the state budget that we will need to have you make a motion to put them into the revenue and expenditures and authorize the county manager or his successor to execute all the documents. There'll be an agreement, and then as we go along, there will be a closeout document down the road. One funding source is $1 million for renovations or repairs at the courthouse. We have been working with the judges, the clerk, and the DA's office to determine what the best use of those funds might be. The second one is construction of the EMS base 1. Whatever we determine, we have $650,000 from the state to either renovate a building if we buy one or create a building if we buy property alone. And the third source is $3,250,000 toward the renovations of the Burke Detention Center to turn it into a regional long-term substance abuse facility. Those plans have not been determined fully yet either. There's some design work, I believe, in place, but nothing else has been determined on that. This is simply to get you to approve the agreements themselves so that we can budget them and have the funds available.
Perfect. Gentlemen? Comments, questions?
Well, I have several questions. Madam Clerk, I need to start with, can you pull up for us where we approved, who was it that is doing this work? We have, I think we're getting the cart before the horse, gentlemen. You know, I remember that we were going to look at what our plans were, but we didn't agree to a budget. We've not seen the plans. We've not approved the renovations. Where is the plan? To me, these next 2 items is just, we haven't agreed to the plans to spend. I don't know what the plans are for $1 million. Why would I agree to $1 million when I haven't seen the plans?
This is simply to accept the funding from the state, and then we would bring you back what those plans might be to actually determine how to spend them. But the state requires us to accept the funding in order to move forward.
And what's the deadline for accepting the funding?
They want it done before the end of the fiscal year, and the preference was that we go ahead and take care of it now, according to the state.
Well, my confusion, Margaret, is we talked about doing this, but we never did approve it as a board. We were waiting on the plans to approve it as a board if we liked the plans or if we thought it was worthwhile. We're writing a blank check without knowing the plans or the timetable, cost, the actual cost,
This would be to accept the funds, not authorize the plans. This gets the money into our budget and tells the state we do want to accept them. They have, if we're not going to accept them, they need to know that before their budget year ends, and their budget year ends in May, and we would not have an opportunity to have these funds. if we don't accept them.
Well, when you read that motion, it says what? To approve. And we don't even have the plans. To approve the renovations, the construction of the EMS base. Now, we've talked about those a lot, but we don't even have a location to build an EMS base. And renovation of substance abuse treatment that we've talked to about time and time and time again and again. We haven't even seen the plans drawn on it, and the cost might be $6 million, not $3 million. And I don't know, I can't vote for a blank check, and that's really a bad curveball to me to okay and approve something. I don't think any of us go to the grocery store and say, I got $200, you get the groceries you want and put them in there and I'll take them. That's not the way we should conduct county business that can affect and have an impact for 20, 30 years. And I don't know, you said we got a deadline. What's the deadline?
The state budget ends in May, and they need us to accept the funding at all possible now to prevent the chance of it being reverted, us not having an opportunity to these funds. This is simply the agreements that we're willing to accept the funds, and when we have plans, we would bring those contracts or those agreements back to you for specific approvals as required under our purchasing. Anything above $90,000 and any of these design contracts, anything like that would come back to you. This is simply to make sure we don't lose the opportunity to have these funds from the state. We're accepting the agreement that we're willing to accept funds from them based on these projects. And then we would have to report back to them. It would go through the normal funding process. We just don't want to lose the opportunity to have these funds to help offset some costs.
Mr. Chairman, maybe we could just change the language here to make it more clear. We're just accepting the funds, and we're not approving any construction.
Would that be a problem as far as accepting the funds? Because I understand we're just accepting funds. Now, what I anticipate, if we get the funds and we say we don't find property for an EMS base station on one, then those funds would be reverted back to the state. So they're not committed at this point. We're just accepting them as a placeholder just to hold until we find a way that's agreeable to us to spend those funds. So, if we can put the language in there to change it, because we aren't committing to anything, we're just committing to accept the actual check. And if somebody wants to send me $5 million and think about how you want to spend it, I'm probably going to accept that.
The motion does read to approve the agreements.
Yeah.
I don't know if that would satisfy what you're looking for. Right now it's written that you're just approving the agreement that we're willing to take the money from the state. But I'm happy to change that wording however it's going to be
Just
more
for a little
comfortable
clarity.
to change it that we're not. Tell me again what you said. I'm sorry, Mr. Britton.
I would just say something along the lines of to approve the agreements to accept the funds for those projects.
And those are state agreements in the state of North Carolina.
To approve the agreements to accept the funds for add that words in there. That will make us, does that feel better?
Mr. Chairman, sorry. May I speak?
Sure.
Has anybody seen the courthouse renovation repairs plan?
We've been working, we don't have the plan yet. We just simply want to make sure we don't lose $1 million that we could utilize toward doing we've looked at the HVAC system. They've requested some painting. They're looking at, is there any potential to do something with the downstairs area to make it usable? A lot of ideas have been thrown out by the judges and the clerk staff, and we're evaluating what might work best and what would fit under this dollar amount so that it is within the $1 million. Hopefully, but also if it's some of such as the roof looks like it needs done. That's something Mr. Delahunt has brought forward as a thought to use some of this money. So if we come up with a plan that the roof and possibly renovations downstairs where the magistrate and the child support office used to be that's vacant now those could be cleaned up and maybe used as storage that the clerk's office has requested, we would use these funds. Hopefully, everything, and it should be, everything we're talking about would be under that $1 million, but we're trying to make sure we don't, that we make a good plan and that we've looked at everything and priced it out to where that it stays within that, and it's things that we can not budget through county dollars but use these state dollars.
Well, if you showed this to the average attorney, I am pretty sure he would say this is not the terminology and the way that needs to be done, because this board, in my opinion, has not got to first base through this process, and we're promising to approve the agreements for all these construction bases and authorize the county manager or his successor to execute the documents. In other words, he doesn't have to come back to this board if we don't like the plan or nothing else. It's a poorly worded motion, and it's surely to goodness no board would accept that motion. None.
It's not for the plan, sir. The motion is only for the agreements themselves.
And those agreements are to accept the financial gift from the state of North Carolina. That is all you are accepting. Once we have the money, we will move forward with the plans for your consideration at that point in time.
Thank you, Brian.
But we don't say that. Can we get JR to rewrite that motion so that it says what we want to say, but it doesn't break the rules or doesn't leave any open windows?
We can do that.
That's what that motion says.
No, it doesn't, JR. I disagree with you. That motion says we approved the plans and gave permission for manager to continue with the execution of the contracts.
The only plan that we gave approval for is an agreement with the state of North Carolina to accept their money. We haven't approved any construction project, and we haven't approved any.
Yeah, read that up there. Approve the agreements for a courthouse renovations and repairs. It says construct an EMS base. It doesn't say maybe. It says do it. Renovate. Long-term substance abuse treatment facility at a cost of we got the money dollars on there.
It says we're accepting money from the state of North Carolina. That's the agreement.
The motion.
JR, can you just put the same?
The motion doesn't
specifically,
even
the agreement
include where the
is
money
to
is
accept
coming
money
from.
from the state of North Carolina and be done with it.
Beg your pardon, sir?
Can you just put that agreement's referring, however you want to stick it in there, that it's just accepting of money from the state of North Carolina?
Sure.
Whenever legal, just for clarity's sake.
Sure.
Easy enough? Any other questions, comments? All right, without objection, this item will remain on items for decision. Item number 3, Space Needs Assessment Report. Margaret?
Josh Bennett with Mosley's was not able to be with us here today, and the report will be presented by him at the next meeting. Should be available for you to read approximately a week before the meeting. We'll make sure you have plenty of time to peruse it, but he was not able to be here to go through the report, and we'd prefer you have it closer to when he can explain, because there's information in there I think is best with an explanation.
Okay. Questions, comments, gentlemen? All right, without objection, this item will remain on the agenda. Thank you, Margaret. Item number 7, reports. This is a placeholder for, this is a presentation by Neil Emery on the recruitment process for a new county manager. As we all know, our dear county manager will be retiring in December, and so we do need to get the ball rolling. And so the North Carolina Association of County Commissioners do offer their services in various capacities. He's just going to come and present to us and let us and explain to us basically they can help us through the process of hiring the county manager with as little help or as much help as we want. And when I spoke with him several months ago, I think all of us would agree. One good thing is, the first thing I said was, depending on the package of an array of help that you offer, what's the cost? Well, since we're a member of NCACC, the cost is nothing. So we're going to at least listen to the presentation and see if this is a way we're interested in pursuing this. And if not, we'll look at other options. But that is why that placeholder is on there. Any questions, gentlemen? If not, without objection, this item will remain on the agenda. Other discussion items. Please spay and neuter your pets. Adopt or foster a pet from Animal Services. Please don't litter. Help our community clean by securing your loads. I won't mention the courtesy reminders on budget meetings again, but I will say this Friday, May 6th, Morgan Courthouse Square celebration. That is 11:30 to 2 p.m. I believe there's a group picture, and Kay, you can double check me. They're very specific on camera times up on stage. I think it's like 12:57. I mean, it's chop. So if you're interested in showing up and getting a group picture, please get there a little before 1 o'clock at least. May 17th will be our regular meeting at 6 p.m. Also, May 18th, should have gotten an invitation for the groundbreaking of the new cancer center. It's going to be a fabulous new center from our friends at the hospital. That'll be obviously in Valdez at 11 a.m. There is on May 20th, Foundation for Charters of Freedom, ribbon cutting at 11 a.m. in Valdez. There is May 22nd, a group photo with justices. That'll be 4 p.m. at the courthouse. May 28th, KIA Memorial Dedication, 10:30 a.m. at the courthouse. May 30th, Memorial Day, county offices will be closed. June 14th, County Assembly Day. And please let Kay know if you're going to be able to attend that County Assembly Day. Just a reminder too, August 11th through the 13th, the NCACC annual conference. It's going to be a little closer to home this year. It's in Concord, North Carolina. So please let Kay know as soon as you know your plans so she can get the hotels booked.
Yeah, I think they're going to open up registration for the hotel rooms later this week. So early bird will get the worm. So if you plan on going, it would be very good to know.
Absolutely. And that being said, that is a lot of reminders. We got a lot of meetings. And so we got a lot going on, gentlemen, and especially during budget season. So that being said, I'll accept a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Thank you, Commissioner Taylor. All those in favor signify with uplifted hand. 5-0, Madam Clerk. Thank you.